Today I talked to George Jerjian. George is an author, mindset mentor, speaker, and creator of the DARE method, which helps people move from retirement into a life of purpose, meaning, and renewed significance. And the story really begins at a moment that changed everything for George. At 52, he was told he may have 6 months to live. A bone tumor the size of an eggplant had been found on his pelvis. For 3 weeks, he lived under the possibility that his life was almost over. Then he learned the tumor was aggressive, but benign. He was alive, and that raised a deeper question. Now what? George retired soon after, believing retirement would give him freedom, but instead, he found himself drifting. No clear identity, no real purpose, no sense of being needed. And after 9 years of what he calls sleepwalking, he went on a 30-day silent retreat and began asking the questions many people avoid until it's too late. Who am I now? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? And how do I move from success into significance? This conversation is about retirement, but it's really about waking up. It's about courage, identity, purpose, morality, travel, gratitude, a hero's journey, and the one wild and precious life we have to live. 2 quick invitations before we get rolling with George here. The first, subscribe to the Personal Success Podcast so you don't have to miss future conversations on success, fulfillment, leadership, self-trust, and what it means to live with intention. And second, if your life or leadership has started to feel heavier than it should, download the 7 Quiet Signals at ryanwattscoaching.com/quiet signals. Now, here's my conversation with George Jerjian. All right, I am with George Jerjian. Thank you so much for spending time with us today on the show.
Excited to be on it, Ryan.
So who is George and what is his mission?
George, who is George? A wonderful guy, of course. George is somebody who thought he understood life until he didn't. I thought I had it. I thought I'd nailed it, right? And then I had my rendezvous with death, my appointment with death, when my oncologist told me I had 6 months to live. And I was like, everything changed. Thankfully, the oncologist said to me, I was diagnosed with bone tumor the size of an eggplant sitting on my pelvis. And the oncologist, looking at it, said, bone tumors are in 98% of cases, 98, are secondary cancer, which means it's spread around your body. So he said, you're looking at 6 months of life. And I'm like, what? And I had one of these, this is kind of like my natural process when I'm given bad news. I have an out-of-body experience. I come out of my body and I go, it's happening to you, mate, not me. You, not me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my reflex. And for 3 weeks, I was under the sword of Damocles as to whether I'm going to live or not, because they obviously had to do tests. And thankfully, after 3 weeks, I go into the oncologist's office and he tells me, you're a lucky man. You belong to the 2% club. Your bone tumor is located in one place on your pelvis. It's aggressive, but it's benign. So it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I mean, I'm living on bonus time is effectively how I described that. That was back in 2007 when I was 52 years old. So what I did realize is that my life can't go on as though this didn't happen. So that, that shock to the system was so profound that I recognized that something's got to shift here. And I realized the value of time that I'd taken for granted. Because we always think death is going to come to somebody else.
Sure.
We think ours is kind of like a long way down.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how many funerals do you go to?
Yeah.
And you feel sad for the person that's gone or for their family, but you think, I think internally we probably know. And when we're sort of sad about it, we're probably sad for ourselves.
Yeah.
Couple of hours later, a few drinks, it's all forgotten. But for me, it was, it hit me really hard because, first of all, what surprised me is I wasn't afraid of death, which was quite shocking because I thought I'd be shit scared.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I don't know why. I'm still trying to grapple with why.
Well, that's interesting. I've got to stop you there, George, because I that's how I was relating to the story. I was like, well, that's a scary experience to have happen, but it's clear something else was happening when you get this news that, oh, you might only have 6 weeks to live. What do you think that was? It wasn't fear. It was...
I'm not quite sure I understand your question. Where are you coming from? What do you mean exactly?
No, let me clarify. Like it's funny when you said I wasn't scared of death. I'm like, oh, wow. That's kind of how I was relating to the story. So if it wasn't fear that you were experiencing, it was a heavy sort of experience that sort of defined your life in a way up to this point. from what I understand. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No.
If it wasn't fear, I guess I wonder, what was it? What was the shift?
Okay. Well, before the shift, the emotion was, I think, in a state of shock. So I think fear didn't come into it because I was in a state of shock. So I was trying to process it mentally because operates in my head a lot. But one thing that did touch me was, well, actually caused me anxiety, was that I wasn't going to be around for my 2 teenage daughters. That was killing me. Not the fact that I was going. And I think perhaps I would have been scared if I had processed all the other stuff and then faced this. But we were moving homes at the same time. I was trying to there was so many balls up in the air that I think I was just sleepwalking through this whole thing. And then once the operation was done to remove it, then I started to think about, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I can't continue the way I was. The first thing I thought about is time is important, so I'm going to retire. So at the age of 52, I retired. Now, Did I have enough funds?
Debatable.
Yeah. You can argue if I'm going to live till 92 or 100, maybe not. But 75, I think I would have been okay. But the point I'm making here is that it was like, I want to be doing things I want to do now, not things that I have to do or should do or must do. It's what is it? And so I thought retirement was the answer, because that's what we've been sold all our lives. And nobody teaches you what you're up against. So I was not recognizing that in retirement, I was stepping into a landmine zone. And the landmines are, and I didn't know it at the time, was that my identity was compromised now. Who am I? And I thought, well, because we've been sold this Ponzi scheme of retirement, right? The drinks, the sailing boats, the golf course, all that jazz.
Yeah.
But that's a vacation. That's not retirement. Let's get this straight. You can't do this. You can't have 7 days of weekend. Our system isn't geared for that. And so I think for 9 years, I drifted. And that's the truth of it. Because I didn't know if there was anything else beyond this.
Yeah.
I'd wait for friends to be able to go out and do things, but they were busy. So I'm waiting on people, and it gets on you. It grates on you, waiting for other people.
Yeah.
And so I found myself, instead of having a fulfilling time, big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Sure.
And so I realized that actually it's perverse, but we as humans are not meant to be idle. Our system can't handle that. Our brains can't handle that. And so we need to have a meaningful life. We need to feel as though we have significance. But in the first half of our life, it's all about success. It's about our identity has been programmed from a young age to succeed in everything we do. It's kind of cultural as well.
Yeah.
And we're not aware that we're not actually thinking. We've been programmed to do that. We're not thinking. And I love quoting Henry Ford, who said, thinking is the hardest thing to do. That's why so few people engage in it. Right? And so after 9 years, I was exhausted of living this fake life of retirement, which was making me ill. It was sapping my energy. It was making me feel inadequate. It was making me feel I'm a nobody. Or as I used in one of my podcasts previously, no one wants me. No one needs me.
Yeah.
Who am I? And so I did a mad thing. It was still mad then. It's still mad now, but it was the best thing I could have done. I went on a 30-day silent retreat to clear out all the debris in my head, to get to the bottom of what is it I want to do with the rest of my life. And who do I want to be? These were questions how can I express this in a way that might make sense? I didn't know these questions. I was feeling them.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to express them intellectually, but my emotions were asking those questions, and they kind of pushed me and goaded me towards the silent retreat where I was going to block out all the white noise around me, all the voices in my head telling me, oh, don't do this. You're mad. Don't take stupid risks. You've worked too hard to mess this up now. All right. Don't let feelings and illusions drive you down the wrong path. Well, let me tell you something. Feelings do not drive you up the wrong path. It's our monkey mind that does. But until you understand that, you're unaware. And so that 30-day silent retreat, I discovered again, there are so many words you can use for this. My inner child, my Quasimodo, the person that I don't want to show my friends, that part of me that, I'm embarrassed or maybe even ashamed of. But I had to bring that part of me into the present and sit with it. And I'm a writer, so I wrote everything down. Ended up with 12 lovely, juicy stories about my life. And that was on the back of an exercise I did, which was a kind of an audit on my life. And it was based on the homes I'd lived in as I was growing up and what were the good things that happened and the not so good things. And in writing this, it seems obvious now, but not at the time, was that I had to be grateful for all the bad things that happened in my life because they were the platform for the good things to come in. The light comes in through the cracks, as Leonard Cohen used to say. It's the cracks, it's the crises in our lives that open us up to new opportunities. And that, if you like, is how I weave my story about retirement is our opportunity to become who we were meant to be.
Yeah. George, there's so many striking things about what you said, but the first one that really stuck with me and I think really I just thought of it now, is that after 52 years, your intention, you're like, okay, I got lucky. I'm now living on borrowed time. Your intention was to do something for yourself, to do something important. I'm going to retire. And that ended up being, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but that launched you on like this sleepwalking for 9 years, right? And I think so many of us, we know, it's like we know something's wrong, right? And in this case, you were sort of put into action and you retired, but it took sort of 9 years for you to figure out how to do that. And I think that's something that's really profound there for people who are coming to grips with that awareness. Sometimes we just think, oh, this is the way it is, but it sounds like you found something different through that, as you said, 9 years of sleepwalking.
You're absolutely right. I mean, let me just rephrase that or repivot that. Yeah. I was 52 when I retired. So 9 years later, I'm 61. I'm still in a place that I can change things, right? It's late, but it's not too late.
Yeah.
If you retire at 65 and you wait 9 years after that, right?
Yeah.
You're what, 74?
Yeah.
I mean, to change direction at 74 becomes pretty hard. I mean,
absolutely.
So I was fortunate that I was able to come back to tell the story.
Yeah.
And that is that you don't sleepwalk into retirement. Okay, you've no idea what you're up against. And the emotional and psychological challenges are immense. And that's why people don't come back once they retire. They just drift, what I call drift into oblivion.
Yeah. 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 I thought about this when our conversation was coming. I was like, well, how am I relating to retirement? And it's funny. I've told this story a million times, so I'll try to keep it quick. I kind of, from the time I was 12 or 13, I almost had a full-time job. It was work a lot, make a lot of money, work your way up. And then I was like, who gave me this script? This is not mine. And it's very similar to what you're sort of talking about, even going into retirement. And I remember I was off for 6 weeks for a surgery and I had to recover and I didn't hear from anybody. And I started feeling that drifting that you're talking about. I was like, I'm never retiring. I put the thought out of my mind and was like, what is it that people want? I guess I sort of saw it as it's a finish line. You get to do everything that you want to do then. And kind of just like what you were thinking was going to happen at 52. And I was 36, 37 when I had this experience. I'm like, I'm never retiring. And then, just to relate to your experience, I had children at 42 and I'm sitting there at twin boys and I've never had, what do you call it? When a thought just takes over, like an intrusive thought. As they're being born, I'm filled with joy and I'm sitting there, saying to myself, I have to figure out how to live longer. I have to figure out how to live longer. It was like the power of that still strikes me. So that is the way that I relate to this. So it's very interesting, the power of sort of children, right? And this this search for purpose and not, retirement to me seemed like I'm just going to, I don't know, when you retire a car, right, you put it in the junkyard.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Ryan. I mean, I've studied this retirement thing for, since 2017. And, and in studying that, I studied the history of it, why it was introduced. I go far as back as Caesar Augustus.
Yeah.
Again, there were sort of political reasons for him to introduce that so the army wouldn't do a coup and take over. And later on, there's always been social, political, and economic reasons for providing a pension and retirement to people. It's never been a natural good thing. Let me explain why. And Albert Einstein said that in nature, right, if you want to find solutions to human problems, look at nature. And in nature, if you look at it, nothing ever retires. It's either growing or dying.
Yes.
You pick your choice. And my conclusion is if you choose retirement, you've chosen death. You're going to stop growing, you will decline, and you will die, right? And Alzheimer's and dementia are natural progressions from doing nothing. Your brain stops to develop, it starts to disintegrate. What is the corollary of that or the opposite of that would be, what is my desire? What do I want? In your case, you have twins. You now have a desire to do something, to be around. And we underestimate the power of desire because desire is it's like an engine. It creates the power for you to go forward. And that's why I always tell retirees, what do you want? What makes you jump out of bed in the morning? And people a lot of people don't know. They don't know because they've suffocated that part of themselves.
Yeah.
So they don't ask the question that's going to make them feel.
I just wanted to say, I think that you're onto something very interesting there. I think you said we suffocate that part of ourselves, right? How do you help people sort of learn how to get back in touch with that?
I use the Joseph Campbell story, the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is generally told from the perspective of an adolescent about to become an adult by going out, making the first kill, becoming a man, right? That's kind of the traditional. But I think after work life, adults like ourselves who go into elderhood, we also need a hero's journey again because we're crossing. It's a rite of passage. We're making a crossing. This isn't a walk in the park. It's not linear. Right? We're moving from the concept of success to the concept of significance.
Yeah.
It's almost the polar opposite. You need different skill sets. You need a different mindset to approach this. Otherwise, the success conversation in the back of your head is going to give you grief and pull you right back to where you were before.
Yeah.
And we all know that, don't we? I quote Carl Jung, who said, what was true in the morning of life becomes a lie in the evening. What was true in the morning of life.
I don't think I ever heard that quote.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of shortened it, but what was true in the morning of life is like ambition, accolades, achievements. Yeah. That becomes a lie in the evening because in later life, you're sort of like the amount of effort you have to make and the rewards are diminishing returns, right? Yeah. It's a contradiction. So you almost have to move into a different dimension. And that's the dimension of significance. Who do I want to be now in this next stage of my life? Who I was is gone. Rest in peace. Buried. Dead. Can't bring it back. Not if you find jobs that are aligned to what you used to do, supplement income, make you feel, better because you're with people. You're scraping the barrel here. That's gone. Make peace with that and move to something better. Now, is this going to be easy? Absolutely not. It's painful, but I promise you, it's so much better than being stuck where we were before.
I think I talk a lot about, I work as a coach and I work with people and I really talk about the internal negotiation that happens, especially in leadership. But in your work, what kind of internal negotiation do you see within people as they move into retirement?
I think the negotiation is that people don't want to take any risks now.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And it's financial, essentially financially led. It's the income stream has the spigot has closed. So now the funds are, if you like, finite, and people are fearful of taking risks. So what they start doing is cutting all the expenses out. Subscriptions, club memberships, all that stuff. The sandbox gets smaller and smaller and smaller, as does your perspective and your life, and at the worst possible time, because we potentially have another 20, 30, possibly 40 years to go, and we're still growing, and we've chosen to die. So what I do is I take them to their deathbed, because that's the best place to go, right? And I know this from the work of the Swiss-American psychologist whose name escapes me now. It'll come. She did extensive research on people who are dying. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that's who it is. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She wrote on death and dying and various other books, and she spent most of her life researching people who are dying, interviewing them for hours.
Yeah.
And what she discovered is a lot of people on their deathbeds were angry that they had not lived their lives. They had lived their lives according to other people's direction.
Yes.
Be it parents, be it spouses and partners, and sometimes even one's kids. We're living for other people. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a family guy. It's important. Family's important. Looking after the people you love is important. But you can't do it at your expense. If you sacrifice yourself to that point that your life is now in service entirely to other people at your expense, right? Then I put it to you that you're betraying yourself.
Yeah.
Now, let me explain. There's a nuance here, right? Love is sacrifice. So when you love people or family, you are sacrificing, but it's a different kind of sacrifice. There's a sacrifice that, you've got your own life, your own things to do, your own needs, and looking after the people you love. Good balance. But when that balance shifts from entirely pushing over to loving and serving the people that depend on you, that you love, then you're betraying yourself. And you will resent that on your deathbed. Because we all are here to do something. We all have talents. We all have connections. We all have desires. We all have a sense of who we are and who we want to serve. And so in a sense, what I'm saying, and I'll close on this, is that retirement is an opportunity to wake up and to smell the coffee, to smell that here is our last opportunity before the lights go out, to be who we want to be and to serve the people we want to serve. So we have a meaningful life. Yeah. Back to you, Ryan.
Well, I want to talk about your book. And last year you had a book come out, Dare to Discover Your Purpose, Retire, Refire, and Rewire. And this book helps retirees evaluate their lives and create a new life, purpose, passion, and prosperity. So what does DARE stand for? And why does that sequence of letters matter?
Okay. Great question. Just the caveat. The book was written back in 2000, I think.
Oh, okay.
The last book I have is Odyssey of an Elder, which we'll come to in a minute. But to your question, there was, if you like, my experience about retirement. It was also about my study about retirement, the history of it, and so on. All through the ages, from Caesar Augustus to Lincoln to FDR to Bismarck, and all the way to the present day. So I'd studied it, my experience, and also I did a survey of over 21,000 people across the Anglosphere about, 9 questions, demographic and psychographic questions, but essentially, what is your single biggest challenge? And what came out, it was during the pandemic, so the results will be a little skewed. 50% said health issues was their biggest concern. Single biggest concern. Obviously, during the pandemic, you'd expect that, but I was still shocked at how high that number was. The second one was outliving savings, which is a pretty scary thing because, again, it's not talked enough, but the vast majority of people do not have enough savings to retire. So it's an illusion, right? Only those who've got defined benefits where they've got a high percentage of their salary for the rest of their lives, and there are very few of those left. People who got from Ks and, those things where it's they're not going to make it. There's barely enough in there for 2-3 years and then it's over. And my question is, what happens to you when you run out of money at the worst possible time in your life, at the age of 80 or 85? That's drastic. I mean, you're looking at mass elder poverty, but put that aside. The third one was at 15% was lack of purpose, aimlessness. So I took all this information and created my course, the DARE method course. And DARE is another word for courage. And the reason I chose that is because when you're retiring, to unretire takes enormous amount of courage, right? Just when, you've been sold a dream for the last 40, 50 years. And now right at the end, people change the goalposts. Life does deal us cards, and we just have to recognize that we need to be adaptable. And so there is the courage to unretire. And I just want to spend time on courage because it's so important.
Please, yeah.
There's a guy called David Hawkins who wrote about the map of consciousness. I love David Hawkins. David Hawkins. You know of him, right? Okay. He had this wonderful triangle in multicolor showing the levels of muscle testing for different emotions. And courage was the pivotal point. Anything below courage were things like shame, guilt, all those horrible things which are really low vibrations. Anything above courage like love, peace, abundance, generosity, those were all above the numbers for courage. And you couldn't achieve any of the higher emotions without courage. So that's fascinating. So that's the first bit about courage, why it's so important. And courage, to be clear, is not an intellectual decision. It's an emotional. And the word itself comes from Latin cor, which means heart. And so we don't recognize that our heart has an intelligence of its own, and our monkey mind will mess with it. And again, I use Albert Einstein, who said, and, as a mathematician and physicist, you'd think he would disagree with this, but actually he said, the intuitive mind, the emotional mind, is the master. The rational mind is its servant. But we live in a world that worships the rational mind and ignores the intuitive. So that's why courage is so important, because it's a heart matter. That's why you need to go to your desire. What is it that gets you pumped up, that gets you inflamed with joy?
I want to share with you, George, that Hawkins was actually so influential on me. Years ago, I went to this kind of this group coaching seminar, and we came, the whole thing of it was to come up with a mission. And my mission was to my gosh, I'm losing the words for it, but it was to raise the level of human consciousness. And I was really talking about that. I was talking about moving into courage and love, right? Whether you believe the way you measured that or not, I think that framework is beautiful, because I think it does take courage to move into love, right? And everything above there is, and so I think a lot of that is about awareness, about having conversations like this, and about the work that you're doing there. I think it's interesting to go onto Amazon and look at some of the reviews of the book sometimes and generate some questions for that. And I think one reviewer pointed that they said, this is not for everybody, but it's life-changing for a subset of people who already have a clear goal and need courage to pursue it.
Yes.
So how would you define the specific kind of retiree this book is truly written for, and who should probably look elsewhere? Is there a way you would make that distinction?
I think it's a really good question, actually. I would say, and I would take this from the emotional position, which is, if you feel that you've still got a lot to give, then this is for you. And you don't want to squander the flame that's inside you that needs to be nurtured and fanned so it become bigger, and not bigger in terms of success, but bigger in terms of significance, how you can impact other people's lives for the better. Then this is where you need to be, because you're not going to learn this from books. Books will give you the recipe. The cooking is a whole different matter.
Yeah.
We always think the books are going to teach us. The books are recipes, okay? And you can sit there and try to do it by looking at the recipe. It's not going to work well, because this is experiential thing, we're not doing a multiple choice exam for you to pass. It's about getting your hands in there and working with parts of yourself that will make you feel uncomfortable. But you need to make that journey if you want to have a life of significance. The alternative, of course, is drifting into oblivion.
Yeah.
It's not a choice. It's not a choice we have.
This is recorded somewhere around 200 episodes of this. And something you said earlier, I'm familiar with how it was like I never thought about it that way because George, where this podcast came from is it's a kind of a cliche, but I was 40 and I'm like, wait, what am I doing? What does success mean? Is it fulfillment? Is it significance? Is it impact? Is it leadership? What is it? And I was like, well, what if I just talk to people about it? And it sort of gained a life of its own. And you said earlier, that success and significance are, they're polar opposites of each other. And when you said that, I was like, I just felt like all of a sudden, I like zeroed in, and I thought, tell me more about those poles and the way you think about them.
All right. Let me give you a visual because sometimes that helps. Visual is, I don't know if you've seen on sort of Instagram memes, you see this sort of a black and white photo of a flamingo and then there's a color photo of the flamingo. The flamingo's moving from black and white into color, right? The black and white is when we live our lives ticking boxes, doing all the right things, and we're very pleased with ourselves, but we're not really living our lives. When we go in color, right, we may get the boxes wrong. We may lose a bit here, but we're living a life of meaning. There's joy. It's a huge difference. And, we're so obsessed with money that we've actually stopped thinking. And I say this as I'm as guilty as anybody else.
Yeah, me too.
It's the human condition. I'm not saying this to point people out. I'm saying this is a cross we bear. And the sooner we kind of put it down, and listen, it's going to come back, even to the best of us. It'll come back and hit us in the head again. And then we need to sort of sit with it and put it down again.
Yeah.
We're not going to starve or die, right? And we're not taking any of this with us. Here's another thing I help people with, which I did for myself, decluttering.
Yeah.
We accumulate, we accumulate so much shit in our lives.
Yes.
And we attach emotions to those belongings. We need to decouple what I call the sort of the emotional, what is it? Somebody once said it so beautifully. We need to detach the emotional molecules away from the goods and allow it to release it. So you actually sort of, I used to have 50 shirts, for example. I have 5 now. Yeah. I don't need 50. Yeah. And we're so trained not to throw things because we might use it later and then we'll regret having given it away. No, everything has an expiry date, ourselves included.
Yes. Yeah.
It's how do you make the most of each day is another thing I help people with is that we always think about a lifetime, but every single day is a lifetime. How much joy can you extract in a day? If you do that,
that's a challenge.
You will sleep well at night. It's a smile, a good word to somebody, a word of encouragement. And it sounds all very silly, but it actually works because when you see somebody encouraged, it comes back to you. You feel it. You sense it, right? So imagine doing the work I do and helping people, if you like, salvage their lives from instead of drifting to oblivion. That gives me immense joy. And transforming people is the hardest thing to do. As a life coach, Ryan, you must know that. It's the hardest thing to do, but also the most fulfilling thing to do.
Well, yeah, I've come upon a theory, and George, I'm wondering what you think about this. And I don't know if I'm stealing somebody's work. If so, I'm not aware, but this is what I've come to is that I'm sort of using this idea of resource, having enough. You have a little bit of money, you have food, you got shelter. So you're basically resourced. And I think once you get to that point where your nervous system can calm down, you feel a certain sense of safety, if you will. I think our natural instinct is to help each other, right? And I think the hypothesis that came up as I was listening to you is that not just helping each other, but using sort of our unique, I want to use like a value proposition, our unique value that we offer to sort of create like a reinforcement, right? So we feel safe. We help somebody and it helps us understand the importance of that safety. So there's something about, I've just come to believe this is a natural part of, this is why it's important for us to take care of each other. Because once we're resourced, right, our instinct is to help each other grow further. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I think that's a natural and also a healthy way of looking at it. But there's many of us who are unhealthy about these things in the sense that enough is never enough to feel safe. If you're in that state of mind, no amount of money will be enough to make you feel safe. And that's living in hell. Seriously.
Yeah.
I think there was a guy called Martin Heidegger, who was a German philosopher who had who for me connected the two words, thinking and thanking. They're not only linguistically connected to the old German and Proto-German or Old English word, thinking and thanking share the same root linguistically.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So in other words, if you're not thankful, you're not thinking.
Yeah.
Think about that. If you're not thankful, you're not thinking. If you're not grateful, nothing else is going to help you because you're just a machine desiring more and more and more to fill a void that's unfillable.
Yeah.
But thinking and thanking are also neurologically. I know this blew my mind.
Yeah.
Again, it's very esoteric, but it makes sense when you think about it. Think, for example, you wake up in the morning, you're grateful that you had a good sleep. You're lucky to have a shower in the morning. Okay. Do you actually stop and think about the activities you do during the day for which we should be grateful? But what do? We're just like machines. We get up in the morning, we go into the shower, we assume this is normal, this is okay. I'm feeling listless today because you're not grateful.
Yeah.
If you stop and think about, you have breakfast on the table in the morning, food to kick you off. You've had a shower and a shave and whatever. You've slept well. You've got people around that you love. You're going to do some work that you love and you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Being grateful for all these small cumulative things changes your mindset. Whereas if you're focused on, oh my God, I don't have enough money. And believe me, I know that. I've been there myself. So I know it's the normal human condition. But if we pivot, right, from that sense of lack to a sense of actually, I'm very abundant. I'm so grateful that I have all these things that millions of people don't have, changes your perspective. So I forgot to answer your question. I'm so bad. I really apologize. DARE is also an acronym for Discover, Assimilate, Rewire, Expand. And in a nutshell, and that's what my course is built on. And Discover is about what retirement is and what it's not. So stripping away the illusion from the reality. A is assimilate. And as a coach, you'd understand this. It's about understanding how our mind works, the conscious and unconscious mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The unconscious mind is fluid. Everything is possible. The conscious mind is controlling. It needs to control. It's limited. And so understanding that you can change how you think by moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, right? A fixed mindset is, I can't do this. A growth mindset is, I can't do this yet. One word, yet pivots. The R is for rewiring. Rewiring that inner dialogue. I can't do this. I'm too old. It's too late for me, right? Changing it to, yes, I can do this. I want to do this, right? Changing that rewiring. And E is for expansion. Well, granted that, retirees are going to live another 20, 30 years, possibly 40. This is no time to retire and unwind and, drift to oblivion. It's a time for expansion, but a new kind of expansion. One where your heart is, intrinsically linked to what you're doing. That makes you feel, that makes you in touch with who you are as your higher self, the person that you'd like to be, and also give you a meaningful life.
George, let's talk about coaching people into their next chapter. And so when someone comes to you feeling lost after retirement, where do you begin?
Well, what I do is I take them through my course, because sometimes telling people something isn't the same as letting them see the story and allowing them to process it in their own heads.
Yeah.
And then opening it up for questions. And that's where the trick happens, because they now see the background of what you're doing and how you can help them. And then they reveal where the stumbling block for them is. And then you can focus on that.
I love that you stole my next question. It was, what's the difference between giving people advice, which a lot of people think coaching is, but it isn't, and sort of helping them hear themselves again? What is that?
That's a really good question. That's why I am not a coach. Let me explain.
Yeah, sure.
To be a coach, you can't just call yourself a coach. You got to go through a whole process, right? It's not my scene. I'm a mindset mentor. I help them to shift their mind, their approach. And that is not so much coaching as
it's like mentoring,
helping them to find their true inner spirit. And they all have it. Nobody's told them that they can do stuff and they've never heard it. So when they hear it from somebody else that, that you are worthy to do what you want to do. Now, if somebody says, I want to be a ballerina and you weigh 150 kilos, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. But, there is the sort of, you can't fight gravity, but the mindset change, the shift is amazing. So, for example, one of the things I recommend to people, and in the end, I had to do it myself because I had to walk my talk, was I recognize that travel is what opens people's minds. When we travel overseas and we see how other cultures live, we see how they respond to challenges. And we actually, my kind of traveling isn't your sort of exotic, experiential sauna and massage in Thailand, that kind of stuff. Mine is the intentional journey. And that's why I did my Odyssey of an Elder book, which was, I went on a 80-day tour around the world because when I was a kid, I fell in love with the book Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. And I thought, right, if I'm going to do something, I want to do something epic for myself, above all, not for other people, right? But for myself. I was 69. This was about 2 years ago. And I went on this 80-day trip, which I fashioned with this travel agency that had experts, country experts in, and I chose the countries I wanted to go to. South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Canada. Part of it was, could I live there? But also to learn things. And I custom tailored my journey with the help of the country experts to avoid all the unnecessary pitfalls, to focus on places that I wanted to go and the reasoning behind it. So like in South Africa, I wanted to do a luxury safari, which I may never get a chance to do again.
Yeah.
Right? Now, again, when we retire, we think I've got all the time to do all that stuff. No, you don't. All kinds of shit's going to happen because you have no idea what retirement is and what it's going to do to your life, that all those dreams are going to go. So you've got to, do your stuff now while you're still healthy and you've still got energy and everything's still functioning. So in South Africa, I wanted to do that. 5 days of 2 sets of 3-hour safaris a day. It was just absolutely,
can't imagine.
It was just unbelievable watching nature, the beauty and brutality of nature. Again, I learned so much about how that actually works in the human life, as it were, the beauty and the brutality, and we have both.
Yeah.
I also wanted to visit Nelson Mandela's island, where he was in jail on Robben Island. I'd read his book. And it's not political here. It's how does a man transcend from hating your enemy, which eats away at you? It's like a toxin. It's a poison.
Yeah.
You're not poisoning them. You're poisoning yourself.
Right.
That hatred is horrible. How do you transcend that to reach where he got to, where he forgave his captors and oppressors and was able to bring a country to healing? I wanted to understand where this man had spent 27 years with a pickaxe breaking limestone in the African sun, which is blinding to the eye. And he lived in a sort of a cell with a ceramic piss pot next to him. It's just phenomenal. So that was in South Africa. I did some beautiful hikes in the route, and I then flew to Australia. In Australia, I wanted to see the Great Barrier Reef, that beautiful natural place, because again, I might never see that again. In fact, it was highly unlikely I'll see that again, but I wanted to actually visually take it in. In Melbourne, I had Melbourne and Sydney were beautiful. I did the Great Ocean Road. And also there were sort of moments of serendipity where I went into the Museum of Immigration in Melbourne, and they had an exhibition on identity. Now, hey, we're talking about retirement and identity, and I'm going, oh my God, I can learn something here. And I spent hours there seeing not just the change in Australia, but in the individuals, what the components of identity, the food we eat, the clothes, everything that we wear says something about us. And, it's part of our identity. And also how the Australians have evolved. In Britain, we've evolved from what we were 40, 50 years ago, as have the Americans and Canadians. They've evolved. The society's evolved. The people have evolved. But we never see it where we live. It's easier to see it when we're out in other people's place and then come back and go, ouch, we've changed too. And we can't go back. You can't go back. What's happened is happened. It's gone. So anyway, New Zealand was amazing. I went swimming with dolphins in Kaikoura.
Wow.
I flew over the Southern Alps. It was just amazing. Japan, 3 weeks in Japan on trains, spending a day with a samurai historian, going to Hiroshima. I mean, it was just walking the Nakasendo Trail, which is kind of like what's it called? The one in northern Spain, the way.
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, it's kind of like the holy walk from medieval days, or the Japanese used to do. Anyway, I had an absolute incredible time. And also the Rocky Mountains in Canada, in Alberta. It was just the awe that you feel in nature really makes you sort of realize there's so much good stuff out there if only we're able to shift our perspective. And so, and to come back to Paulo Coelho's book, The Alchemist, where his protagonist goes around the Mediterranean, traveling the world. He experiences loss, learning, love. He comes back to his hometown. He's changed, and his perception of his town has changed. And so travel, I think he said, the quote he said, and for me, that encapsulates what I did, was that traveling is not so much about discovering who we are. It's about discovering who we are not, so that we can be who we were meant to be.
I think that's an important function right there. I never have equated travel with that, but it sounds like that was just an incredible experience. It sounds like you outdid the book.
Well, put it this way, I still have dreams of images coming to my head at nights of my journey, which is really wonderful.
Yeah.
And no regrets at all.
Sure. That's funny how, I will say, travel has done that. I went on a very magical trip to Italy. Yeah, and just went to every part of Italy, and I spent so much time walking. I'll just have dreams about being on those walks because it was so otherworldly. And I think you're right. I think one of the things I realized is it helped me know who I wasn't. So that way I was clear on who I was. Right. And I think that there's something there. I want to talk about Odyssey of an Elder. This is your new book.
No, this is the travel. This is the book of my travel around the world in 80 days. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
But that is what I meant was you outdid the Jules Verne book. I hope that came through.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. No, he got a princess.
I think it's important too. You have to keep, but there has to be something to shoot for, right?
There is, but I have to say, I met the prince in me. Yeah. Hello. Okay. And in a sense, we seek love outside of us, whereas it's actually within.
Yeah.
It's a whole different, again, the romantic love narrative of Hollywood impregnates our brains through all the films and the series that we see. It's a false narrative in many, many ways, because again, using the Christian analogy, love your neighbor as yourself. But the reality is that how can you love your neighbor if you don't love yourself first?
It's so true. So true. Yeah. And it's not a popular point of view.
Well,
I found.
It's not, because again, when I think you love yourself, and I don't mean hedonistically here, right?
Sure.
I'm talking about loving yourself. In other words, not beating yourself up for things that people think that you should be aspiring to. It's being comfortable with who you are, comfortable in your skin. That's loving yourself. That's being authentic. Now, some people are not going to like that because you're showing them what they are not.
Yes.
And they will dislike you for it. But recognize this, they don't dislike you because they don't know you. They dislike what you are showing them. And in my point, it's their problem, not yours.
George, you speak from such a place of authentic wisdom and experience. It's been great to sit on this side of the conversation and just hear you share your experience. As we come to a close, I just want to know, what question should I have asked you, or what did you want to leave the audience with today?
Wow. My sense is that America is going through a spiritual awakening. Everything they thought was real is showing up that it's not real. And it's going to get more challenging. But I think America's destiny is to go through a spiritual reawakening. They did so back in 1776. And for those of us who have an inkling about astrology, the Pluto return is here for America. It's exactly in Pluto in Aquarius is about revolutions. It happened in 76, and 200 and something years later, to 50 something years later, Pluto's back in exactly the same position as it was in 1770.
Yeah.
So
really, I did not know that.
I know, but there's actually a lot of science in astrology, but it's poo-pooed as there's more science in astrology than in economics. And yet, yeah,
I believe that.
So my point is that I think America's going through a massive challenge, and it'll come through. But I think as individuals, I would quote that's actually impacted me from an American poet laureate, Mary Oliver, who said, "What will you do with your one wild and precious life? What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" And that's had an immense impact on me. And I always quote this because it's the most direct, authentic hit you can make to somebody, okay? Because everyone in their own way, their life is precious. And if it's not, it should be. And what will you do with it? Now, we think, we're a drop in the ocean, but as Rumi says, we're an ocean in a drop. It's a paradox.
Yes.
We're much more powerful than we think, but we diss ourselves because we can't deal with it emotionally. But we need to grapple with it. And when times get difficult, which they are now, and they will continue to become even more difficult, this is the path. It's that internal journey, the journey of the hero, and you are worth it.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, George. This has been a great conversation. I love George's challenge to rethink retirement. Don't think of it as an ending, as a withdrawal, as 7 days of the weekend, but as a passage, a rite of passage from success into significance. George makes a powerful point. What was true in the morning of life may become false in the evening. The ambition that once moved us may no longer nourish us. The identity that once served us may no longer fit. The achievements that once mattered may not answer the deeper questions anymore. Who am I now? That question is not only for retirees, it's for anyone who senses that the life they built no longer fully matches the life calling them forward. George's work here reminds us that courage isn't intellectual. It's a matter of the heart. And sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is stop drifting, stop performing the old identity, and ask what still wants to live through us. If this episode gave you something useful, something relevant to your life, subscribe to the Personal Success Podcast so you don't miss future conversations. And if you're a leader and still performing, still achieving, but sensing that life or leadership is costing you more internally than it should, download the 7 Quiet Signals at ryanwattscoaching.com/quiet signals. It'll help you recognize the subtle signs of internal friction before they become harder to ignore. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time on the Personal Success Podcast.